The auction house buzzed with excitement. Wealthy collectors from every corner of the galaxy filled the massive hall, their eyes gleaming with greed as they examined the exotic creatures on display. This wasn't just any auction house. This was the Galactic Exotic Creatures Market on Station Kepler 7, the most prestigious place in known space to buy rare and dangerous animals. Today's main attraction had everyone talking. A real Draconis stellaris. A dragon from the Andromeda sector. These creatures were the stuff of legends. They could survive in the vacuum of space without protection. They breathed plasma hot enough to melt starship hulls. When fully grown, they reached sizes that rivaled military destroyers. Owning one meant ultimate status, ultimate power, and an ultimate price tag that could buy a small planet. In the back row, tucked away from the wealthy elite, sat Dr. Lily Brooks. Her clothes were simple, worn from years of space travel. Her tablet was old and cracked at the edges. She looked completely out of place among the silk robes and expensive jewelry surrounding her. But her eyes held something the rich collectors didn't have: genuine wonder at the creatures themselves, not their price tags. Lily had scraped together every credit she'd earned over 3 years of research work. 18,000 credits total. It was supposed to be her fund for eventually opening her own laboratory. But she couldn't resist coming here, hoping maybe, just maybe, she could afford something special. Something she could study and care for properly. The auctioneer, a tall alien with 4 arms and elaborate ceremonial clothing, stepped onto the platform. His voice boomed across the hall, amplified by hidden speakers. Distinguished guests. The moment you've all been waiting for. Lot 47. A genuine Draconis stellaris hatchling. Only 3 months old. Guaranteed authentic genetic markers. The crowd erupted in excited chatter. Lily leaned forward, her heart racing. She'd studied these creatures in school. They were incredible. Intelligent, powerful, magnificent. And completely out of her price range. But she wanted to see one in person just once. The handlers brought out a containment field, and Lily's excitement instantly turned to concern. Inside the shimmering energy cage was the dragon hatchling, and something was very, very wrong. The little dragon was tiny. Way too small for 3 months old. According to everything Lily had learned, a Draconis stellaris at that age should be the size of a large dog. This one was barely bigger than a house cat. Its scales were dull gray instead of the brilliant colors she'd seen in videos. Its wings hung limply at its sides like broken umbrellas. When the handlers prodded it with shock sticks to make it perform, the poor thing could barely lift its head. The excited chatter in the auction house died instantly. You could hear a pin drop. A nobleman in the front row stood up, his face twisted with disgust. Is this some kind of joke? That thing is defective. Other voices joined in, angry and disappointed. We came here for a real dragon, not this pathetic worm. The genetic scan must be wrong. This is an insult. The auctioneer's confident smile cracked. He looked genuinely panicked. I assure you, esteemed guests, the genetic verification is absolutely authentic. Perhaps the specimen is simply having an off day. An off day? Another collector laughed cruelly. Look at it. It can't even stand properly. Dragons are supposed to be fierce predators, not dying rats. The handlers prodded the hatchling again, trying to make it demonstrate its plasma breath. The little dragon opened its mouth and managed only a weak puff of smoke before collapsing back down. Some people in the crowd actually started laughing. Lily felt sick to her stomach. This wasn't entertainment. This was a living creature suffering, and everyone was treating it like a broken toy. The auctioneer was sweating now. Shall we begin bidding at 100,000 credits? Complete silence. Perhaps 75,000? Nothing. People were already standing to leave. 50,000? Surely someone recognizes the investment potential. The nobleman from the front row turned back. I wouldn't pay 5,000 credits for that pathetic thing. Put it out of its misery and move on to something worth our time. Lily looked at the little dragon. Its eyes were open, watching the crowd. And in that moment she saw something that broke her heart. The dragon understood. It knew it was being rejected. It knew everyone thought it was worthless. The poor creature's eyes held not just pain, but a devastating sadness that no animal should ever feel. 25,000? The auctioneer's voice was desperate now. 20? 15? Anyone? People were filing out of the hall, already discussing dinner plans and complaining about wasted time. The auction house was emptying fast. Lily looked down at her tablet. 18,000 credits. Everything she'd saved. Her future laboratory. Her dreams. All sitting in her account, waiting for the sensible, practical thing. But when she looked back at that cage, at those sad, intelligent eyes in that tiny suffering body, she knew what she had to do. Because Lily understood something these wealthy collectors didn't. She'd spent years studying xenobiology and she'd learned one crucial truth. When an exotic creature was failing to thrive, it usually wasn't because of genetics. It was because of care. Or rather, the lack of it. This dragon wasn't defective. It was starving, neglected, dying from improper treatment. And everyone was so focused on what it couldn't do that they missed what it could become. Lily raised her hand, her voice clear in the nearly empty hall. 5,000 credits. The auctioneer spun around so fast he almost tripped. 5,000? Madam, surely you meant. 5,000 credits, Lily repeated firmly. That's my offer. The few remaining collectors turned to stare at her. One of them, a wealthy merchant, shook his head pityingly. Stupid human. That thing won't last a week. You're throwing money away. The auctioneer looked around desperately, hoping for a better offer. None came. With a defeated sigh, he raised his gavel. Going once at 5,000 credits. Going twice. Sold to the human in the back row. As Lily walked forward to claim her purchase, she heard the whispers. What an idiot. Humans always think they can save everything. She'll regret this. Maybe she would. Maybe they were right. But as she approached the containment field and the little dragon's eyes met hers, something amazing happened. For just a second she felt warmth in her mind. Not words exactly, but a feeling. A tentative reaching out. A desperate hope. Dragons were supposed to be telepathic. Lily had read about it but never experienced it. This feeling was weak, barely there, but it was real. Hey there, little one, Lily whispered as the handlers deactivated the containment field. She reached out slowly, letting the dragon see her hand. My name is Lily, and I promise you something right now. I'm going to figure out what's wrong and I'm going to help you. No matter what it takes. The dragon's tail twitched. Just slightly. But it was the first voluntary movement the creature had made since being brought out. Lily carefully scooped up the hatchling. It weighed almost nothing, all bones and papery wings. But when she held it against her chest, she felt that telepathic warmth again, stronger this time. The dragon was trying to communicate. Trying to say thank you. As Lily carried her new companion out of the auction house, past the sneering collectors and the pitying stares, she made a decision. She'd name him Spark. Because even the smallest spark can start the biggest fire. She had no idea how right she was. The galaxy was about to learn that humans had a very specific talent. They didn't see creatures for what they were. They saw them for what they could become. And with patience, knowledge, and stubborn determination, they could turn the unwanted into the unstoppable. The rejected dragon and the determined human. Together they were about to change everything. Lily's quarters on the cargo freighter Morningstar were barely big enough for one person, let alone a person and a dragon. The cramped cabin had a narrow bunk, a tiny desk covered in research equipment, and a storage locker that didn't quite close anymore. Now it also housed Spark, who spent most of his time curled up in the corner, barely moving. The first week was terrifying. Lily honestly thought Spark might die. He refused to eat anything. She'd bought 3 different types of exotic creature feed from the station vendors, all supposedly designed for carnivorous predators. Spark sniffed each bowl, looked up at her with those sad eyes and turned away. Come on, buddy, Lily pleaded on day 5, kneeling beside yet another untouched bowl of food. You have to eat something. Please. Spark just closed his eyes. He was getting weaker. His scales were losing what little shine they had. Lily could count every rib through his papery skin. That night Lily didn't sleep. Instead, she sat at her desk with her old tablet, diving deep into research. The problem was that almost nobody knew how to actually raise a Draconis stellaris. These creatures were so rare and valuable that most information was locked behind military classifications or expensive private databases. The few public articles focused on adult dragons used in combat, not baby ones that needed proper care. But Lily had access to the Galactic Academic Network through her researcher credentials. She started connecting dots that nobody else had bothered to connect. She pulled up stellar maps of the Andromeda sector where dragons came from. She studied geological surveys of their home planets. She read evolutionary biology papers about how creatures adapt to extreme environments. At 3 in the morning, exhausted and running on her 5th cup of coffee, Lily found it. The breakthrough that would change everything. Draconis stellaris evolved on planets orbiting neutron stars. These weren't normal garden worlds with sunlight and rain. These were hellish places bathed in exotic radiation, with soil rich in heavy metals that would poison most life forms. The dragons hadn't just adapted to survive there. They'd evolved to need it. Their biology required trace elements that didn't exist in normal creature food. Iridium, osmium, platinum group metals. Without these elements, dragon hatchlings couldn't properly develop their scales, their fire-breathing organs, or their telepathic abilities. It wasn't that Spark was defective. He was literally starving for nutrients his body desperately needed but wasn't getting. Lily immediately started sending messages across the station network. She traded research favors with the chemistry lab. She spent her last few hundred credits buying powdered metal supplements from industrial suppliers who thought she was crazy. She begged the ship's engineer for access to the isotope synthesizer, promising to clean it afterward. 2 days later, she had her custom formula. Her hands shook as she mixed the ingredients, praying she'd gotten the ratios right. Too much of these heavy metals could be toxic. Too little wouldn't help. She added the powdered supplements to a protein base, then enriched it with synthesized particles that mimicked the radiation signature Spark's body expected. "Okay," Lily said, placing the bowl in front of Spark. "This is my best shot. Please work." Spark lifted his head slowly, exhausted from days of not eating. He sniffed the bowl. Then his eyes suddenly widened. He practically lunged at the food, eating so fast Lily worried he'd choke. "Easy, easy," she laughed, tears streaming down her face. "There's more. I can make more." Spark finished the entire bowl in seconds and looked at her expectantly. Lily had never been so happy to see an empty dish in her life. She made 3 more bowls that night. Spark ate them all. The transformation over the next few weeks was incredible. Spark's scales began to darken, shifting from dull gray to deep charcoal black with hints of red along the edges. His wings strengthened and he started attempting short flights around the cabin, though he mostly just knocked things over. His eyes brightened from muddy brown to brilliant amber. Most amazingly, his plasma breath developed from weak smoke to actual sparks. But Lily didn't stop at just fixing his diet. She'd read enough about dragon intelligence to know these creatures were smart. Really smart. They weren't pets that needed training through punishment and dominance. They were partners who needed understanding and respect. She established routines. Every morning, they'd go to the cargo bay where Captain Ben Hayes had given them permission to use the space. Lily would exercise while Spark practiced flying. When he crashed into storage containers, which happened a lot at first, Lily didn't scold him. She'd help him up, check for injuries, and encourage him to try again. She talked to him constantly. About her research. About the stars passing by outside. About her childhood on Earth and how she'd always dreamed of working with alien creatures. At first, she felt silly talking to an animal. But then she started feeling that telepathic warmth again. Spark was listening. Really listening. And slowly he began responding. It wasn't words exactly. More like emotions and images. When Lily felt happy, Spark felt happy. When she was worried, he'd press his head against her hand, trying to comfort her. Their bond grew stronger every day. The other crew members started noticing. Jake, the cargo handler, would stop by to watch Spark practice flying. "That dragon's getting big," he commented one day. "And fast." He was right. 3 months after Lily bought him, Spark was the size of a large dog. His wings could carry him across the entire cargo bay. His plasma breath could melt through metal plates. But more impressive than his physical growth was his intelligence. Lily started teaching him problem-solving exercises. She'd hide treats around the cargo bay, and Spark would have to figure out how to reach them. At first he just used brute force. But then he started thinking. Using his tail to flip switches. Using his wings to create air currents that moved objects. Even using his plasma breath and controlled bursts to trigger weight-sensitive platforms. "He's incredible," Lily told Captain Hayes one evening. "His cognitive abilities are way beyond what the research papers suggested. I think dragons are actually smarter than most people realize." Captain Hayes nodded thoughtfully. "Or maybe he's smarter because you're treating him like he's smart. Ever think of that?" Lily had. In fact, that was becoming her whole philosophy. Across the galaxy, exotic creatures were treated like objects. Force-fed growth hormones. Kept in tiny cages. Trained through pain and fear. The wealthy collectors wanted instant results, perfect obedience, and impressive displays. But Lily was proving there was a better way. Respect and patience produced results that force never could. The real test came 4 months after the auction. The Morning Star was making a routine cargo run near the frontier sectors when pirates attacked. The alarm blared through the ship, and Lily heard plasma fire in the corridors. They were being boarded. She was in her cabin with Spark when her door exploded inward. 2 pirates burst through, weapons raised. One was a huge alien with gray skin and too many arms. The other was human, with cold eyes and a cruel smile. "Well, what do we have here?" the human pirate said, pointing his weapon at Lily. "A scientist. You'll fetch a nice ransom." He took a step toward Lily. He never got to take a second one. Spark erupted from behind the bunk like a dark lightning bolt. His plasma breath turned the corridor behind the pirates white-hot. The alien pirate went down screaming. The human dropped his weapon and ran, terror replacing his cruel smile. But Spark didn't stop there. Through their telepathic bond, Lily felt his protective rage. These intruders had threatened her. That was unacceptable. Spark tore through the ship, hunting down every pirate who dared board the Morning Star. He moved with terrifying intelligence, cutting off escape routes, cornering groups, using the ship's layout to his advantage. The pirates who survived fled back to their ship, babbling about a demon. About a dragon that fought with the fury of a guardian angel. When Captain Hayes found Lily standing in her doorway with Spark at her side, both unharmed, he just shook his head in amazement. "Doc, I think you might have created something special here." Lily looked down at Spark, who was now the size of a small horse, his scales gleaming like polished obsidian, his eyes bright with intelligence and loyalty. She thought about the pathetic, dying hatchling she'd bought for 5,000 credits. The creature everyone said was worthless. "I didn't create anything," Lily said softly. "I just gave him what he needed and trusted him to become what he already was." Word spread fast in the spacer community. Station to station the story traveled. The human scientist who'd bought the reject dragon. The creature that should have died but instead became a guardian. People started asking questions. How did she do it? What was her secret? Lily's answer was always the same and always simple. "I treated him like he mattered." Everything else followed from that. But not everyone was happy about Lily's success. 3 sectors away, in a luxury suite on a private yacht, a Vortion nobleman named Lord Thane was listening to the rumors. He pulled up old auction records, stared at images of Lot 47, and felt cold fury building in his chest. That pathetic worm he'd rejected. That defective creature he'd laughed at. Was thriving. Growing strong. Becoming everything a Draconis Stellaris should be. And it was bonded to some nobody human instead of him. Lord Thane began making calls. He had lawyers. He had connections. He had pride wounded beyond repair. If he couldn't own that dragon, he'd make sure the human who did would regret ever crossing his path. The battle for Spark was about to begin. 6 months had passed since Lily bought Spark at that auction. She was working in a small laboratory on Station Concordia Prime, analyzing mineral samples, when the notification popped up on her tablet. It was a legal document. A very official, very threatening legal document. Her hands went cold as she read it. Then she read it again, hoping she'd misunderstood. She hadn't. Lord Thane, the Vortion nobleman who'd rejected Spark at the auction, was suing her. He wanted Spark back. The legal claim was 300 pages long, filled with complicated language and references to obscure galactic commerce laws. But the basic argument was clear and infuriating. Lord Thane claimed the auction house had committed fraud by not properly disclosing Spark's hidden exceptional potential. Lily felt sick. This was insane. Everyone at that auction had seen Spark. Everyone had rejected him. Lord Thane had literally said he wouldn't pay 5,000 credits for a pathetic worm. Now, 6 months later, after Lily had saved Spark's life and nursed him to health with her own money and effort, this wealthy noble wanted to take him away. She immediately called her friend Danny, a young lawyer who worked with the Xenobiological Research Association. He'd helped her with paperwork before, always pro bono because he believed in her work. Danny's face appeared on her screen and he looked worried. "Lily, I got a copy of the filing. This is bad." "Bad how?" "I bought Spark legally. I have all the receipts, all the documentation." "I know," Danny interrupted. "But Lord Thane has a dozen lawyers from the most expensive firms in 3 sectors. They're arguing that you somehow knew about Spark's potential because of your research background. They're saying you exploited specialized knowledge to get an unfair deal." Lily wanted to scream. "That's ridiculous. I saw a dying dragon and wanted to help him. I didn't know if he'd even survive." "I believe you," Danny said quietly. "But Lord Thane has connections on multiple council subcommittees. The case is going to arbitration on Concordia Prime with a 3-judge tribunal. 1 Vortion, 1 crystalline, 1 from the neutral worlds. Given Lord Thane's influence with the Vortion government. We're going to lose," Lily finished, her voice hollow. Danny didn't argue. They both knew how this worked. Money bought justice in the galaxy, and Lord Thane had more money than Lily could imagine. The arbitration hearing was held 2 weeks later in a massive public tribunal chamber designed to accommodate different species. Lily sat at a small table wearing her nicest clothes, which still looked shabby compared to the expensive suits surrounding her. Across the aisle, Lord Thane's legal team filled 3 entire rows, all wearing robes that probably cost more than Lily's annual salary. Lord Thane himself sat in the gallery radiating smug confidence. He was tall and imposing, with silver-traced scales and cold amber eyes that fixed on Lily with pure contempt. To him she wasn't a person. She was an obstacle. An insult. A nobody who dared to succeed where he'd failed. The lead judge, a Vortion named Magistrate Kellen, called the hearing to order. Lord Thane's lawyers immediately launched into their case, and it was devastating. They presented Lily's academic credentials, making her sound like some kind of genius manipulator. They showed her published research papers on exotic creature nutrition. They pulled up her purchase records, claiming every careful calculation she'd made proved she'd known exactly what she was doing. Dr. Brooks clearly possessed specialized knowledge that gave her an unfair advantage, declared the lead attorney, a sharp-faced woman named Victoria Kane. She recognized value that ordinary buyers couldn't see. This constitutes material non-disclosure and voids the purchase contract. The dragon rightfully belongs to Lord Thane, who would have bid appropriately had the creature's true potential been disclosed. Danny tried his best to counter, but he was one lawyer against a small army. He pointed out that anyone could have researched dragon biology. He showed Lily's modest bank account, proving she'd spent everything she had to keep Spark alive. He argued that Lord Thane had his chance and rejected it. But Lily could see the tribunal judges, especially Magistrate Kellen, nodding along with Lord Thane's arguments. This wasn't really about law. It was about power and politics. On the 3rd day of the hearing, Magistrate Kellen addressed Lily directly. Dr. Brooks, do you dispute that you used specialized knowledge to acquire this creature? Lily stood, her legs shaking but her voice steady. I used compassion. I saw a living being who was suffering and I wanted to help. That's all. How convenient, Lord Thane called out from the gallery, earning only a mild rebuke from the judges. Magistrate Kellen looked at her notes. The tribunal requires additional evidence to make a proper determination. We request the dragon's presence for direct examination. Lily's heart sank. Bringing Spark here into this hostile environment was the last thing she wanted. But she had no choice. The law required it. The next morning, Spark arrived in a specialized transport. He'd grown tremendously in 6 months. Now the size of an earth elephant, his scales gleamed like polished midnight with veins of molten copper running through them. His wings, when folded, still dominated the space. His presence filled the entire tribunal chamber. The moment the transport doors opened and Spark saw Lily, everything changed. The dragon moved with surprising grace across the polished floor, his eyes locked on her. He completely ignored the gasps and nervous movements from the crowd. He went straight to Lily, lowered his massive head and pressed it gently against her chest. Lily wrapped her arms around his neck, fighting back tears. "Hey boy," she whispered. "I missed you so much." Through their telepathic bond, she felt Spark's emotions. Confusion about this strange place. Worry about why they'd been separated. But also joy at being reunited. And underneath it all, absolute trust in her. Magistrate Kellen watched this reunion with careful interest. "Dr. Brooks, please step away from the specimen." Lily reluctantly released Spark. The dragon settled beside her, his body language relaxed but alert. His intelligent eyes tracked every person in the chamber, assessing threats. "Lord Thane," Magistrate Kellen said, "please approach the specimen for examination." Lord Thane stood, confidence radiating from every movement. He walked towards Spark with the bearing of someone who expected obedience. "I merely wish to examine what should rightfully." Spark's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. His entire body coiled into a defensive stance. His wings flared wide, making him appear twice his already impressive size. A deep, rumbling growl emerged from his chest that made several people in the gallery stand up nervously. Wisps of plasma smoke curled from his nostrils. His eyes, warm and gentle when looking at Lily, turned absolutely glacial when focused on Lord Thane. The temperature around Spark noticeably increased. Small flames danced along his scales. Lord Thane stopped walking, his confidence faltering. The creature is clearly poorly trained. This aggressive behavior demonstrates. Spark's growl intensified, cutting him off. The dragon took one deliberate step toward Lord Thane, plasma building visibly in his throat. "Lord Thane, return to your seat immediately," Magistrate Kellen ordered, her voice sharp. The moment Lord Thane retreated, Spark relaxed completely. The flames vanished. The growl stopped. He settled back beside Lily as if nothing had happened, though his message was crystal clear. The crystalline judge, Magistrate Vale, spoke for the first time, her translucent form shimmering with interest. Fascinating behavioral display. Dr. Brooks, would you please call the specimen to you from across the chamber? Lily walked to the far side of the tribunal floor. Spark, come here please. The dragon moved immediately, crossing the space with careful deliberateness. He was massive and powerful, but he moved around the furniture like he was afraid of breaking things. When he reached Lily, he laid down flat, allowing her to lean against his side. Through their bond, she felt his contentment. This was where he belonged. The judges conferred in hushed tones for several minutes. Lily's heart pounded. Everything depended on this moment. Finally, Magistrate Kellen spoke. This tribunal has reviewed the documentation regarding Draconis stellaris as a species. While not classified as fully sentient by Galactic Council standards, they possess advanced cognitive function sufficient for limited self-determination, particularly in matters of social bonding. Lily barely dared to breathe. Given the unmistakable evidence of a profound bond between Dr. Brooks and the specimen, and given the specimen's clear rejection of Lord Thane's claim, this tribunal recognizes an unusual circumstance. The dragon will be permitted to choose its own guardian. The gallery erupted in shocked whispers. This was unprecedented. Magistrate Kellen raised her hand for silence. Dr. Brooks, stand to the left of the chamber. Lord Thane, approach from the right. The specimen will indicate its preference. Lily moved to the left, her stomach churning with anxiety. Lord Thane approached from the right, his face tight with barely controlled anger. Spark stood in the center, his head turning to look at both of them. For a moment, everything was silent. Then Spark walked to Lily without hesitation. He sat beside her, extended one massive wing protectively over her shoulders, and turned his head toward Lord Thane. He released a single, precise puff of plasma, not enough to harm but enough to make his opinion absolutely clear. The message was unmistakable. This is my human. Mine. Not yours. Never yours. The gallery exploded with noise. Magistrate Kellen banged her gavel repeatedly for order. The tribunal rules in favor of Dr. Lily Brooks. The bond between guardian and creature is legitimate and supersedes Lord Thane's claim. The purchase was legal and binding. Case dismissed. Lily almost collapsed with relief. Danny was grinning from ear to ear. Even the neutral world's judge was making approving notes. But Lord Thane's face was a mask of absolute fury. As Lily left the tribunal with Spark, she heard him speaking urgently to Victoria Kane. His words were quiet but venomous. This isn't over. If I can't have the dragon, I'll make sure that human regrets everything. Lily felt Spark's protective anger surge through their bond. She placed a calming hand on his neck. They'd won this battle, but she had a terrible feeling the war was just beginning. What she didn't know was that Lord Thane's next move wouldn't be against her directly. It would be something far worse. Something that would put not just her and Spark at risk, but millions of innocent lives. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in the galaxy isn't a dragon. It's a proud man who can't accept being wrong. 2 weeks after winning the tribunal case, Lily received another official notification on her tablet. This one made her blood run cold. The Galactic Council was launching a formal inquiry into private ownership of potentially weaponized exotic species. The timing was suspicious. The target was obvious. They were coming after Spark. Danny called her within minutes of the announcement. Lily, this has Lord Thane written all over it. He has connections on 3 different council subcommittees. If he can't take Spark through the courts, he'll use government regulations. The inquiry statement was carefully worded, but the threat was clear. Any creature classified as level 4 threat or higher would need to undergo mandatory safety assessments. Draconis stellaris were classified as level 6. If Spark failed the assessment, he'd be declared a military asset requiring government containment, which meant they'd take him away and lock him in some facility forever. There's only one option, Danny explained over video call. The Proving Grounds. It's a public demonstration where exotic creature owners show their companions are safe and controllable. If you pass, the council has to recognize Spark as a legitimate private companion. If you fail, they take him, Lily finished quietly. Yeah. And Lily, you need to understand something. No Draconis stellaris has ever participated in the Proving Grounds. They're considered too dangerous, too unpredictable. The council is betting you'll refuse to participate, which gives them grounds to classify Spark as an uncontrolled threat. Lily looked over at Spark, who was resting in the corner of her expanded quarters. He'd grown again, now too large to fit in normal rooms. His scales shimmered like living shadows, and small flames occasionally flickered along his spine when he dreamed. He was magnificent and powerful and absolutely terrifying to anyone who didn't know him. But Lily knew him. She felt his thoughts, his emotions, his gentle soul wrapped in that fearsome exterior. "When are the proving grounds?" she asked. 3 weeks. On asteroid Sigma 7, neutral territory. "Lily, are you sure about this? If something goes wrong." "Nothing will go wrong," Lily said with more confidence than she felt. "Spark and I are partners. We'll prove it to everyone." The next 3 weeks were the most intense of Lily's life. She studied every previous proving grounds competition, watching hours of footage showing various creatures and their handlers. The tests were designed to demonstrate control, intelligence, and most importantly, safety around civilians. She practiced with Spark constantly. They worked on precision flying through obstacle courses. They practiced combat scenarios where Spark had to distinguish between threats and innocence. They drilled emergency stop commands until Spark could halt mid-attack in an instant. But Lily also did something different. She didn't just train Spark to obey. She trained him to think, to assess situations, to make intelligent decisions on his own. Because she knew the real test wouldn't be obedience, would be trust. The day of the proving grounds arrived. Asteroid Sigma 7 was a massive facility carved from solid rock, with observation platforms that could hold thousands of spectators and shields strong enough to contain a battleship's weapons. Hundreds of exotic creatures participated annually, everything from telepathic cats to armored behemoths. But when Lily and Spark arrived, they were the main attraction. Holocameras swarmed them. Reporters shouted questions. The story of the Reject Dragon had captured galactic imagination, and now everyone wanted to see if the legend was real or just hype. Half the galaxy hoped they'd succeed. The other half was waiting for them to fail spectacularly. The staging area was enormous, designed for creatures much smaller than Spark. Lily stood beside him, running her hand along his scales, trying to calm both their nerves. "We've got this," she whispered. "Just stay with me, okay?" Through their bond, she felt Spark's determination mixed with anxiety. He understood the stakes. If they failed, they'd be separated forever. The first test was announced, the obstacle course. Lily had watched footage of this. Creatures had to navigate through energy barriers, gravity wells, floating platforms, and mechanical puzzles. It tested agility, intelligence, and the handler's ability to guide their companion through complex challenges. The course opened into a massive canyon filled with obstacles. Lily climbed into the custom flight harness she designed, securing herself to Spark's back. They'd practiced this configuration for weeks, developing a rhythm where Lily's observations complemented Spark's instincts. "Ready, boy?" she asked. Spark launched into the air with powerful wing strokes. The crowd gasped as his massive form soared across the starting line. The first obstacle appeared immediately, a wall of crackling energy too thick to penetrate. "Left, Spark. There's a gap on the left." Spark banked hard, his wings tucking tight as he shot through a narrow opening Lily had spotted. The energy wall crackled inches from his scales, close enough that Lily felt the heat, but Spark's control was perfect. The second challenge was a gravity well, a zone where artificial gravity tried to pull them into the asteroid floor. Lily felt the massive force trying to drag them down, but Spark spiraled through it, using his wings to create thrust at angles that defied what she'd thought possible. Then came the mechanical puzzle, and this was where things got interesting. 3 pressure plates were positioned in a triangle, too far apart for one creature to activate simultaneously. The course designers assumed handlers would use tools or have specially trained creatures. Spark studied the setup for maybe 5 seconds. Then he moved. His tail hit one plate. His left forelimb pressed the second. And he released a controlled burst of plasma breath against the third, the force enough to trigger the pressure sensor. All 3 plates activated at once. The next section of the course opened. The crowd went absolutely silent, then erupted in cheers. Even the skeptical observers were taking frantic notes. They completed the obstacle course in record time for their size class. But Lily knew the real tests were still coming. The second challenge was combat simulation. This terrified Lily more than anything. They'd be facing holographic targets mixed with physical drones. The test required controlled aggression, the ability to neutralize threats without excessive force. The simulation began with drone swarms attacking from multiple directions. Spark's response was breathtaking. His plasma breath carved through drone clusters in precise bursts, using only enough power to disable each target. His talons swatted smaller drones from the air with surgical accuracy. When he destroyed something, there was no wasted energy, no excessive violence. Just efficient, intelligent combat. But then holographic civilians appeared among the hostile drones, designed to look panicked and running in random directions. Some handler's creatures had failed this test by attacking everything that moved. Spark hesitated, his head swiveling to assess the situation. Through their bond, Lily felt his confusion. There were threats mixed with innocence. How should he respond? Trust yourself, Lily said softly. You know the difference. Spark took a breath and engaged with stunning intelligence. He used low-power plasma bursts to disable weapon systems without harming the drone's control units. He physically shielded holograms from crossfire using his wings. When a particularly aggressive drone got too close to a holographic child, Spark interposed his body, taking the damage himself rather than risk a wild shot. When the simulation ended, every threat was neutralized and every civilian was untouched. The scoring system showed perfect marks. The crowd was going wild. Even the council observers looked impressed. 3 more tests followed over the next day. Environmental adaptation, where Spark performed flawlessly in vacuum, underwater, and crushing gravity. Obedience protocols, where he responded instantly to Lily's commands but also demonstrated the intelligence to refuse obviously harmful orders. Endurance assessment, where he outlasted every other participant without showing significant fatigue. By the second day's end, Lily dared to hope they might actually pass. Spark had been perfect. He'd demonstrated power, intelligence, and control beyond anything the observers expected. Then came the final test. The one they hadn't been told about. Lily and Spark stood in the central arena when the announcement came. Final assessment, civilian interaction protocol. Handlers and creatures will demonstrate safe behavior around vulnerable populations. Lily's stomach dropped as a group of children entered the arena. Young beings from a dozen different species, part of a council-sponsored education program. They looked tiny next to Spark's massive form, fragile and innocent. This was the real test. How would a creature bred as an apex predator react to small vulnerable beings invading his space? Standard protocol had handlers using chains, force fields, or sedatives during such encounters. Lily had none of those things. She couldn't restrain Spark even if she wanted to. He was too large, too powerful. She walked beside him to the center of the arena, every camera in the facility focused on them. The children approached slowly, chattering with excitement and nervousness. Lily knelt beside Spark's massive head, looking into his amber eyes. They're children, Spark. Just babies. Be gentle, okay? Through their bond, she felt Spark's understanding. And something else. Protective instinct. Not toward the children as threats, but as innocents to be guarded. Spark lowered himself completely flat against the ground, making his huge form as non-threatening as possible. He tucked his wings close and kept his head down, even though Lily could feel his nervousness through their connection. A small crystalline girl approached first, her translucent hand reaching out tentatively. She touched Spark's scales and her face lit up with wonder. He's warm. Like holding sunshine. Other children followed, emboldened. Soon a dozen young beings were climbing on Spark's back, petting his wings, running their hands along his scales. They asked Lily a million questions. What does he eat? Can he really fly in space? Does he have a favorite toy? A tiny human boy, maybe 5 years old, walked right up to Spark's face. Are you scary? He asked with the brutal honesty only children possess. Spark responded by gently blowing a perfect smoke ring, no heat or danger, that floated around the boy's head like a crown. The child laughed with pure joy. Can we fly? Asked a young Vortion, her scales shimmering with excitement. Lily looked at the council observers. They nodded permission. This was still part of the test. With the help of safety personnel, the children were secured in special harnesses on Spark's back. Lily helped each one, making sure they were safe and comfortable. Through their bond, she felt Spark's careful focus. He understood the responsibility. Spark rose slowly, testing his balance with the extra weight. Then he took off, flying gentle circles around the arena. His movements were smooth and controlled, fast enough to be exciting but never frightening. He performed a lazy barrel roll that made the children squeal with delight. He flew low enough that parents could see their kids' happy faces, then landed with the delicacy of someone setting down priceless treasure. The children tumbled off, begging for another ride. Parents in the observation areas were smiling and waving. Even the most skeptical council members looked genuinely moved. When the proving grounds officially concluded, Magistrate Kellen approached with the final assessment. The entire galaxy was watching via broadcast feeds. Dr. Lily Brooks and the Draconis Stellaris designated Spark, she announced formally, have achieved the highest combined scores in proving grounds history. The Council recognizes this bond as exemplary and removes all restrictions on private ownership. Furthermore, this tribunal recommends Dr. Brooks' training methods be studied and implemented across exotic creature care programs galaxy-wide. The arena exploded with applause. Lily hugged Spark's neck, tears streaming freely down her face. They'd done it. Against all odds, against all the powerful people who wanted them to fail, they'd proven that partnership was stronger than domination. But in the VIP observation area, Lord Thane watched with a face twisted by rage. He was speaking urgently into a communication device, his words inaudible but his fury unmistakable. Danny appeared at Lily's side, grinning widely. "You did it? This is incredible." "It's not over," Lily said quietly, watching Lord Thane. "He won't stop until he destroys us." She was right. Lord Thane's next move would be his most desperate and most dangerous. And it would threaten not just Lily and Spark but an entire civilization. Sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't the ones with teeth and claws. They're the ones consumed by pride and unable to accept defeat. 3 years had passed since that fateful auction on Kepler 7. Lily Brooks had become something she never imagined, a celebrity scientist. Universities across 5 sectors wanted her on their faculty. Her research papers on exotic creature nutrition and bonding psychology were required reading in xenobiology programs. The Galactic Academic Network featured her work in their most prestigious journals. But more importantly, her methods were changing lives across civilized space. Creatures once labeled as aggressive or defective were finding new homes with handlers who applied Lily's philosophy of respect and understanding. Auction houses that once euthanized imperfect specimens were now working with rehabilitation centers. The age of creatures as trophies was slowly dying. The age of creatures as companions was being born. Lily now worked aboard the research vessel Stellar Dream, a state-of-the-art ship funded by the newly established Exotic Creature Welfare Foundation. She had her own lab, a real crew, and the freedom to study creatures across the frontier. And she had Spark, who'd grown into something magnificent that defied all previous records for his species. He was now twice the size of typical adult Draconis Stellaris, his body so massive that some smaller vessels mistook him for a moon when he floated in space. His scales were living obsidian threaded with veins of copper fire. His plasma breath could cut through starship armor like tissue paper. His telepathic abilities had developed so strongly that he could share complex thoughts and abstract concepts with Lily. They were partners in every sense of the word. Where one went, the other followed. Their bond had become legendary across the galaxy. Lily was in her lab analyzing data from a recently discovered crystal wing species when the emergency broadcast interrupted every screen on the ship. "All stations, this is Vortion Command Central. The home system is under massive attack by unknown hostile forces. All available military and civilian ships, respond immediately. Repeat, Vorta Prime is under attack." The transmission dissolved into static, then fragmented images of chaos. Dark machines swarming through space like locusts. Vortion defense ships burning and breaking apart. Cities on the planet's surface going dark one by one. Danny, who joined Lily's crew as legal advisor and research partner, pulled up tactical data on the main screen. His face went pale. "It's an AI swarm. Ancient war machines from the collapse era. Someone reactivated them." Lily watched the footage with growing horror. The swarm consisted of thousands of autonomous attack drones, each moving with terrifying coordination. They weren't just attacking military targets. They were systematically destroying infrastructure, communication relays, power stations, and civilian population centers. Through her telepathic bond, Lily felt Spark's immediate alertness. He was resting in the ship's external docking cradle, but now his consciousness pressed against hers with urgent intensity. "How far to the Vortion home system?" Lily asked, already knowing what she had to do. Danny checked the navigation computer. 3 jump points. About 3 hours. "Lily, what are you thinking?" She was already moving toward the docking bay. "I'm thinking that millions of innocent people are dying." "But the Vortions? Lord Thane is Vortion. His people treated you terribly. You don't owe them anything." Lily paused at the doorway, turning back. "Lord Thane is one person. There are millions of others down there who never did anything to us. Children, Danny. Families. People who just want to live their lives. We can't let them die because one nobleman was cruel." Danny understood. He'd seen Lily's compassion save dozens of creatures over the past 3 years. Of course she'd extend that same compassion to people, even people who'd wronged her. Lily reached the docking bay and found Spark already preparing for flight. His wings were extended, his scales were glowing with inner heat, and through their bond she felt his complete readiness for combat. She climbed into the advanced flight harness they developed for long-distance travel and combat situations. It connected her directly to neural interface points along Spark's spine, strengthening their telepathic link even further. "You remember what Lord Thane tried to do to you?" Lily said softly, running her hand along Spark's jaw. "His people weren't kind to us. Nobody would blame us for staying away." Spark's response came as a flood of emotions and concepts rather than words. Justice versus revenge. Understanding that innocent lives deserved protection regardless of politics. The conviction that Lily would want to help so he would help. And underneath it all, fierce determination to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. It was the most human sentiment Lily had ever felt from a creature that wasn't human at all. "All right, boy," she whispered. "Let's go save a world." The 3-hour journey felt like 3 days. They emerged from the final jump point into absolute chaos. The AI swarm was even worse in person than on the broadcast. Thousands upon thousands of sleek black drones moved in patterns so complex they seemed like a single living organism. Each drone was heavily armed and shielded, designed centuries ago for wars that nearly destroyed galactic civilization. The Vortion defense fleet was in ruins. Capital ships drifted with catastrophic hull breaches. Fighter squadrons were scattered and disorganized. Lily could see why the swarm was winning. Every time the Vortions adapted a tactic, the AI learned and countered within minutes. Conventional weapons couldn't track the swarm's unpredictable movements. Standard battle formations were useless against an enemy that attacked from all angles simultaneously. Lily opened a communication channel to Vortion Command. "This is Dr. Lily Brooks with Draconis Stellaris Spark, requesting combat coordination." There was a pause filled with weapons fire and shouting. Then a voice responded, strained and exhausted. "Dr. Brooks? This is Admiral Cole, Fleet Commander. We appreciate any assistance, but one dragon against thousands of—" "Trust me," Lily interrupted. "Just keep your ships out of Spark's way." She cut the channel and connected fully to Spark through their neural link. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for generations. Spark dove into the swarm like a comet thrown by an angry god. His scales deflected energy fire that would have vaporized conventional fighters. His wings moved with impossible grace, banking and spiraling through drone formations. His plasma breath carved through clusters of enemies with surgical precision. But it was his movement that changed everything. The AI swarm was designed to predict patterns based on physics, logic and tactical doctrine. It could counter any conventional attack because it could calculate probable trajectories and responses. Spark didn't move conventionally. He moved like a living creature with millions of years of predator evolution behind him. He spiraled when logic said to bank. He attacked from below when doctrine said to attack from above. His instincts were completely unpredictable to machines designed to predict everything. And he wasn't alone. Lily's mind was linked with his, providing strategic thinking to complement his combat instincts. She spotted communication nodes in the swarm's formation. Spark destroyed them. She noticed energy distribution patterns indicating weak points. Spark exploited them. Together, human intelligence and dragon ferocity created something the AI had never encountered and couldn't comprehend. The Vortion fleet began to rally. With Spark disrupting the swarm's coordination, their weapons could finally land effective hits. Fighter squadrons reformed around Spark like fish following a shark, using his chaos to create their own opportunities. "All units, follow the dragon." Admiral Cole's voice rang across all military channels. "Coordinate with Dr. Brooks. Pattern Delta Dragon." For 6 brutal hours, the battle raged across the Vortion system. Spark became the living spear that pierced through the swarm's defenses. His plasma breath never faltered. His movements never slowed. When exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him, Lily felt it through their bond and guided him to brief recovery periods while the fleet covered his retreat. She felt his pain when drone weapons scored his scales. She shared his fury when drones targeted civilian evacuation ships. She experienced his determination when the battle seemed impossible. They were truly one being in 2 bodies, fighting with perfect coordination. The turning point came when Lily spotted something the Vortion military had missed. Hidden behind the planet's largest moon was a massive structure, heavily shielded and protected by triple layers of drones. "Spark there." That's the coordinator. That's what's controlling the entire swarm. Through their link, Spark understood immediately. He gathered himself and launched on a trajectory that took him through the densest concentration of enemy drones. Energy beams scorched his scales. Explosive rounds detonated against his wings. Plasma fire left burning wounds across his flanks. But nothing stopped him. Nothing could stop him. Because Spark wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for the people below. For the children hiding in shelters. For the families huddled in fear. For every innocent life that deserved a chance to see tomorrow. The coordinator ship tried to flee, its engines burning at maximum power. Spark was faster. His jaws clamped down on the ship's main reactor housing with crushing force. His plasma breath, white-hot and focused, burned through reinforced armor that was supposed to be indestructible. The ship exploded in a massive fireball that lit up the entire moon's surface. The shockwave threw Spark tumbling through space, but Lily held on, her harness and their bond keeping them together. Without their coordinator, the swarm drones lost all cohesion. They scattered randomly, their sophisticated attack patterns dissolving into chaos. The Vortion fleet systematically destroyed every remaining drone over the next 2 hours. When the last enemy signal went silent, Lily and Spark floated in space above Vorta Prime, both utterly exhausted. Spark's scales were scorched and cracked in places. His wings had tears that would need time to heal. But he was alive and the planet below was saved. Dr. Brooks. Admiral Cole's voice was quiet, filled with emotion Lily had never heard from a military officer. On behalf of the Vortion people, thank you. We owe you and Spark a debt that can never be repaid. You saved our world. Lily was too tired to respond with words. She just hugged Spark's neck, feeling his exhaustion mirror her own, and whispered, "Good boy. We did good." 2 days later, after emergency medical treatment for Spark and rest for both of them, Lily received an unexpected request. Lord Thane wanted to see her in person. She met him in a private chamber on the medical station where Spark was recovering. Lord Thane looked 20 years older than when she'd last seen him. His scales were dull with stress and grief. She'd learned he'd lost family members in the attack, cousins who'd been stationed at a defense platform that hadn't survived the initial assault. "Dr. Brooks," he began, then stopped. His voice cracked. "Lily, I don't know how to say this." Lily waited, still wary despite everything. "I was wrong," Lord Thane said finally, the words seeming to physically pain him. "About you. About Spark. About everything. I saw a trophy where you saw a living soul. I valued pride where you valued life. And when my entire civilization faced extinction, it was the creature I rejected and the human I tormented who saved us." He pulled out a data tablet. "This is a complete formal apology and retraction of every legal action I ever took against you. It will be broadcast across all major networks. I can't undo the pain I caused, but I can make sure everyone knows the truth." Lily studied him carefully. She could see genuine remorse, but she also saw something else in the intelligence reports Danny had shown her. "Why did you reactivate that AI swarm, Lord Thane?" His scales went completely white. "What?" "Military intelligence traced the activation codes back to shell companies connected to your family holdings. You unleashed ancient war machines on your own people." "Why?" Lord Thane collapsed into a chair like a puppet with cut strings. Tears streamed down his face. "I wanted chaos. Just enough that the Council would implement strict military control over exotic creatures. I thought you'd lose Spark and I'd be vindicated. I never meant for it to escalate like this. I never meant for thousands to die." Lily felt cold fury building inside her. "You killed thousands of your own people because your pride was hurt?" "I know." His voice was barely a whisper. "I've confessed to Admiral Cole. I'll face trial. Execution probably. I just wanted you to hear it from me first. I wanted you to understand that the real monster in this story was never Spark. It was always me." Lily stood, looking down at this broken man who'd caused so much pain. "You're right about one thing. You're a monster. But you're also right that you can't undo the damage. So here's what you're going to do with whatever time you have left." She leaned forward, her voice hard. "You're going to establish the Exotic Creature Welfare Foundation with every credit in your family fortune. Rehoming programs. Rehabilitation centers. Research grants. You're going to make sure no creature ever suffers from cruelty and ignorance the way Spark suffered." Lord Thane looked up at her with desperate hope. "You'd give me the chance to do something good?" "I'm not giving you anything. I'm telling you how you'll spend your final days. Because if you don't, I'll make sure the galaxy knows every detail of what you did and why. Your family name will become synonymous with petty evil for 1,000 generations. Lily's voice softened slightly. But if you really commit to this, then maybe one creature gets saved because of your money. Maybe one handler learns to treat their companion with respect. It won't redeem you. Nothing will. But it might mean your pathetic existence wasn't completely worthless. Lord Thane nodded, fresh tears falling. I'll start immediately. I promise. Lily left without another word. She had no forgiveness for him, but she understood that sometimes the best you could hope for from terrible people was that they stopped making things worse and started making things better. 6 months later, the Galactic Council held a ceremony on Concordia Prime to officially sign the new Exotic Creature Welfare Act into law. Universal standards for creature treatment. Bans on forced breeding and trophy hunting. Rehabilitation centers across every sector. It was the most comprehensive protection legislation in galactic history. Lily stood at the podium with Spark beside her. He was fully healed now, his scales gleaming brighter than ever, veined with copper fire that seemed to pulse with inner life. He was so large that a special reinforced platform had been constructed just to hold him. His presence dominated the massive assembly hall, but nobody looked afraid. They looked inspired. 3 years ago, Lily began, her voice carrying across the chamber, I bought what everyone considered a worthless dragon for 5,000 credits. I didn't know he would become the guardian of worlds. I didn't know our story would change galactic law. I didn't know we'd save millions of lives. She looked at Spark, feeling the warmth of their bond. What I did know was that he deserved a chance. Every being does. We've spent thousands of years as a civilization measuring worth by power and price. But the most valuable things in this universe can't be bought. They're earned through patience, respect, and love. Around the galaxy, billions watched the broadcast. On Kepler 7, the auction house had been converted into a rescue center. On Vorta Prime, Lord Thane's foundation was opening its 100th facility, all dedicated to creatures deemed worthless by old standards. Lord Thane himself watched from a prison cell, 2 months before his scheduled execution. He'd spent every day working on the foundation. It wouldn't save him, but thousands of creatures would live better lives because of it. Perhaps that was redemption of a sort. Lily concluded her speech. We stand at a crossroads. We can continue treating creatures as possessions and weapons. Or we can recognize them as partners and equals. The choice we make defines not just how we treat other species, but who we are as a civilization. She extended her hand, and Spark lowered his massive head to nuzzle her palm with impossible gentleness. I know which future I choose. The one where the weak become strong. Where the rejected become champions. Where a dying hatchling becomes the protector of worlds. Spark raised his head and released a triumphant roar that shook the entire assembly hall. Not a threat but a promise. The age of trophies was dead. The age of true companionship had begun. And across the galaxy, in auction houses and breeding facilities, on military stations and private estates, handlers looked at their creatures differently. They saw partners instead of property. They saw potential instead of profit. They saw what Lily Brooks had always seen, that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from domination, but from the simple act of caring. 5 years after that auction on Kepler 7, Dr. Lily Brooks and Spark continued their work, traveling the galaxy and proving every single day that the most dangerous predator in the universe isn't always the one with the biggest teeth or the hottest fire. Sometimes it's the one with the biggest heart and the courage to see value where others see only waste. They had rejected their weak alien dragon. A human girl bought it and made it, and herself and an entire civilization, into something better. And that made all the difference.